28. And the Tigers bring some pressure, and Pickett's again scrambling for his life. Hit. Ball comes out. It's Wilkins rumbling toward the end zone and knocked out inside the 5. He finds all sorts of ways to make plays.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 18 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. I am not Drew Archer. I'm Matthew Johnson. Drew, as we talked about at the end of the last episode, had a trip scheduled to Nashville this weekend, so he is unable to make it to the episode. I do have his picks, though, so we'll still be able to do that. Also, I'm still in my temporary setup, and I have to leave this door open again. We have another animal here this time. You just saw him coming behind me. That's Otis, so everybody leave a comment and say, hey, Otis, tell him how cute he is. I'll read them all to him. But big week in college football coming up. Really didn't have that much happen this past week, but just to recap, we had a couple big games in the ACC specifically. Toledo, Pittsburgh, 48-46. That game went into overtime, and Toledo won 48-46. Pittsburgh at one point this season was 7-0. Finished the season 7-5, so really disappointing for the Pittsburgh Panthers there. Second game, Eastern Carolina, NC State. I didn't really get to watch a bunch of this game, but I did get to see the brawl that ensued at the end of the game. ECU comes out on top of this one, 26-21. I'm not entirely sure what started the brawl, but it seemed pretty intense between those two teams. They're, not too far away from each other, NC State and Raleigh. I think ECU in Greenville, North Carolina. Not too sure why the brawl needed to happen there. Obviously, you see a ref come out of that with probably needing stitches, but ACC not looking very good in bowl season so far. I think there might only be one bowl win for the ACC so far this year, and that leads us to this last game, Iowa State versus Miami. Iowa State comes out of that one 42-41 victors. Me and Drew were talking about this. We hadn't heard much news about whether Cam Ward was going to play in this game. And as far as opt-outs, I didn't feel like there was any news this year really about big players opting out of their bowl games. Seems like everybody was sticking around playing that one more with the team. Cam Ward comes into this game, breaks the NCAA passing touchdown record, and then leaves. Well, he stays on the sideline, is dressed, and is coaching his backup quarterback, but it seems like there was an agreement between him and the coach at first to let him get that record and then have him sit, because if I were him, I would have opted out, but obviously, the bowl game gave him the opportunity to break that NCAA record, which is congratulations to him. Some say that he quit on the team, but if you really look at, top 10 draft picks of the past 5 years that aren't in the playoffs, they're all opting out too. This is more than any of them have done for their team. So before we get into a little bit of the offseason updates this week, got to shout out our loyal sponsor, Pump Monkey Septic Services, owned and operated by Clemson alumni, Alan Powell, based in the upstate, service the entire upstate, all the way from Walhalla up to Simpsonville, all of that, Spartanburg. I bet he would even make the trip if you sweet talk him a little bit. But you can give him a call at 864-710-2211 and find him on Facebook and Instagram. Alan's a great dude. He does great work and good, honest work. So even if you don't know if you have a problem, feel free to reach out to him and he will come out. He's going to do honest work for you. So once again, that phone number is 864-710-2211. Pump Monkey on Facebook and Instagram. When the dumb's funky, call Pump Monkey. So obviously the Clemson football season has come to an end after the loss to Texas. So we're just kind of here going to be going over off-season updates and following the rest of how the college football season plays out. There are 3 big players that were possibly transfer portal people. I didn't really think so, but they were kind of in the back of my mind as possibilities. So far, we have 3 big announced returns on the defensive side. That's Peter Woods, TJ Parker, and Wade Wood, as all have said they're coming back to Clemson next year. Obviously, you lose Barrett Carter to the draft. I think he's out of eligibility. Having those guys returning, obviously, you'll still have Sammy Brown coming back too, as long as nothing fishy happens with him in the portal. Defense is looking pretty good. It'll be interesting to see what staff decisions go with that. And so far, we only have 2 players that have announced to enter the portal. As of time of recording this is early Monday. Those 2 players, AJ Hoffler, redshirt freshman defensive end. He played in each of the last 2 seasons. I think it was about 15 games and had a couple tackles for loss and a good amount of tackles. I know a lot of people were high on him coming into Clemson. I guess he just wasn't getting the playing time that he thought he deserved. I guess he got passed by Jaheim Lawson on the depth chart this year. So he is moving on from Clemson. And then this is another one that Drew mentioned last week, but Jackson Crosby, a walk-on wide receiver, not a scholarship player, but a big friend of the show. So good luck to both of those players in their future endeavors. And then my last category for offseason updates is the still not fired category. And the only name in there right now is Wes Goodwin. So still on the staff as of now. My speculation is similar to how the Garrett Riley and Brandon Streeter fire and hire occurred. Dabo had his replacement picked out, interviewed, and offered before firing the person that it was replacing. I'm pretty sure the announcement for the Brandon Streeter news came on like a Tuesday, and then that next Wednesday, it was already announced Garrett Riley was going to be the offensive coordinator. So my hopes are that Dabo is currently interviewing DCs, figuring out what he wants to do, what direction he wants to go, and once he gets that side of it nailed down, then we will get the Wes Goodwin news. Not looking promising right now. I think we're about to enter 2025 with Wes Goodwin as DC. We'll see. We'll keep you updated next week on any of those announced returns, transfer portal entries. I don't think Clemson's going to go after anybody else in the portal. We already talked about, we got that wide receiver. I guess it's D2 or FCS, D2 from Southeast Missouri, and then Will Helt from Purdue, one of the bigger targets this year in the transfer portals in the cycle. So yeah, we'll keep you updated on that, and we can move on to Fact or Fiction.
Fact or Fiction.
Fact or Fiction. Boise State's Ashton Jeanty, with his record-breaking season, deserved the Heisman Trophy over Travis Hunter. I'm saying fiction. I've been a big supporter of the Travis Hunter movement for the past couple seasons. I think he is an amazing player, incredible, once in a generation really, to be able to play as much as he does, get away from injuries as much as he does, and make an impact on both sides of the ball as much as he does. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty, crazy season this year, record-breaking, Heisman finalist. I don't know what else you can ask for a Boise State player. Any player from Boise State, that honestly might be the peak, unless a Boise State team like wins a national championship or something, or just absolutely dominates, has like a tough out of conference and still goes undefeated, then you might start looking at a Boise State player to win. But I think just the fact of the competition that Boise State was playing, that's probably why Travis Hunter gets the nod. Obviously, the Big 12 isn't like a standout conference, but I think everybody was just impressed with Travis Hunter. It's a once-in-a-generation season. Not that Jeanty's isn't, but I think you're more likely to get another season like his before we get another Travis Hunter. Fact or Fiction. Miami players fighting on the sidelines during the Pop-Tart Bowl and Cam Ward sitting out of a one-score game suggest deeper issues within the program. I think this one's a fact. We kind of talked about this last week when we were talking about speculating on whether Cam Ward was even going to play in this game. I was surprised that it had made it that far without an announcement being made. I was impressed by him for even getting out there and playing and risking injury after, he's probably going to be top 5 pick this year in the draft. So I respect him for doing that. The players fighting on the sidelines, what we were speculating about is that there's just like a culture issue within the Miami program. I don't think it's anything that any of the coaches or players particularly did. It's just the reputation that Miami football has, and it attracts a certain type of person in my eyes. So I think that's a fact. I do still respect Cam Ward for even playing one snap in that game. And our last fact or fiction of the week. Fact or fiction, the age of NIL has impacted players opting out of bowl games. I think I am going fact here. I wonder if the NIL contracts and in the NIL collective, if that has incentives or something of the sort for players to play in the bowl games. I feel like there was a significant decrease in opt-outs in 2024 than we had in 2023 and the few years prior. So I wonder if those contracts are a thing. Like I said earlier, it seems like there was an agreement between Cam Ward and the Miami staff and team that once he got that record, he was getting out of the game no matter how close the score was. I mean, like I said, I think he should have opted out. He might have had some like contract stuff that had him play the game in order to get his certain amount of money. That's a possibility, and I think that's a good incentive to have for the players. Like, it makes the bowl games more exciting, less opt-outs. You're not just seeing like a shell of what the team will be next year. You're still getting that last game, a celebration, and kind of like just something different for college football, and I think that's moving in the right direction, so I'm saying fact on that one.
Weekly picks.
All right, let's review our pick'em contest from week 17. It was a good week for me. I only missed on one pick this week, and I am only 1 point down from Drew now. Also, the day of recording this is Monday. Missouri is playing in their bowl game tonight. If Missouri wins, they go over 10 wins on the season, and one of my preseason picks hits, which puts me up to 7 preseason points versus Drew's 6, and that would theoretically tie up the contest. So I missed on Texas A&M. They were favorited over Southern Cal. I thought Texas A&M was going to be good. Southern Cal just came out and put a really good performance, won that 35-31. I hit on underdog over and under. Underdog BYU +4, over Georgia Tech Vandy +51.5, and under Oklahoma Navy 43.5. Pretty good week for me there. Drew's picks, not as great, but still had a pretty decent week, going 50%. He had Georgia Tech as his favorite at -3 over Vandy, and Vandy came out on top. He hit on underdog, which was Iowa State +3 versus Miami, and Iowa State won that game outright 42-41, as we were just talking about. Missed on the over BYU versus Colorado, which I believe, that score was 36-14, so total of 50, just barely missed. And he hit on his under, which was Louisiana Tech versus Army, under 43.5. So very close coming down to the wire. I'm really hoping for a Missouri win tonight, so you guys will know before me, obviously, because this episode will be posted tomorrow, and you'll already know the result of that game. So comment and let me know how good I'm doing. But with that, Drew already sent me his picks, so we can get into our picks for this next upcoming week. We set the dates for the 31st, New Year's Eve, through the Saturday the 4th. I think both of us just picked only playoff games, though, so we'll know by Wednesday night. With that, I think I'm going to run down all of my picks, and then I will run down all of Drew's picks instead of bouncing back and forth between favorite. We'll do them all at one time. So my picks for the playoffs, round 2 quarterfinals, I got Penn State -11.5 versus Boise State. I think Penn State had a really good showing against SMU. I think Boise State is probably a very similar opponent to SMU, and Penn State looked very dominant defensively, especially in that game. So my underdog, I was really surprised when I saw this line, Oregon +2.5 versus Ohio State. This is a rematch from earlier in the season. Oregon won that game by 1 point with a couple mental mistakes by Ohio State. I'm surprised that Oregon isn't favored in this game after having the bye. I think Georgia is the only team that had a bye that is favored in their quarterfinal game, which is kind of crazy. So we'll see how that works out. And moving forward in the future, like the 12-team playoff, I'm not sure how it's going to be run because Vegas thinks it's going to be a little lopsided. So my over, I'm going Notre Dame versus Georgia. That Georgia game I was just talking about, that line is 44.5, and both of these teams have good defense. It's going to be low scoring. I just have in my head for some reason that the final score is going to be 23-22. I think it's a 1.5 point line right now, and 44.5 is the over. And so that means Notre Dame is going to cover but still lose, and the over is going to hit by 0.5 point. So I don't know why. I just have a feeling that that's what that score is going to be. And my last pick, my under for this week, is Penn State versus Boise State. I picked it again. I picked Penn State as my favorite, but I also think the under is going to hit here. That's over under 53.5. Boise State can definitely put up points, but Penn State showing against SMU last week was very impressive. So I think they're going to carry that through and shut down that Boise State rushing attack. There might be an asterisk on this. I'll have to give you guys an update next week because Drew texted me his picks. One of the lines he sent me is not what I have as the line for it. I asked him if he wanted to keep it, and I have yet to get a response. So I'm just going to leave it as is and say that Drew's favorite pick this week is Ohio State over Oregon. It's head-to-head versus my underdog of Oregon versus Ohio State. So he had it as only a 1-point line, and I think it opened as a 1-point line for Ohio State, and it's moved to 2.5. So as long as he's fine with staying with that 2.5 line, that's going to be his pick for this week. Drew's underdog, Notre Dame, plus 1.5 versus Georgia. That's very interesting. I think Georgia has a good chance here, but obviously you're starting Gunnar Stockton for the first time. Notre Dame looked very good all year, except for that one game in like week 1 or 2 against Northern Illinois. They've really dominated every opponent since then, so I think that one's going to be a really good game. I have a feeling Georgia is going to come out on top, but we'll see. And then for over, Drew went with the Texas-Arizona State game. That over-under is 51.5. I could see that happening. Arizona State has a pretty good offense. Texas has a really good defense, though. I'm assuming he picked that thinking most of those points are coming from Texas. And the under for Drew in the quarterfinals is Penn State, Boise State. That's the same under I picked also, under 53.5. So not much more to say about that one. So with that, we don't have obviously a Clemson game to preview. I just have like a little short preview for each of the playoff games, so we can jump into that. So the first playoff game, I'm going to try and get this episode edited and uploaded before this game happens. And I think something happened on my laptop's like cache on ESPN. I think it still thinks I'm in Colorado, so all of my times that I put for these games might be Mountain Daylight Time. Sorry. New Year's Eve at 5:30 p.m. The Verbo Fiesta Bowl features Boise State versus Penn State. As I've already mentioned, Penn State is an 11.5 point favorite. Over-under for this game is 53.5. These teams have never played before. Penn State obviously coming off that dominating 38-10 win over SMU. Boise State, we've already talked about it this episode. Running back Ashton Genty, I think he's almost at 2,500 yards, rushing yards, and 30 touchdowns this season. Penn State's defensive unit is very tough, though, so it's going to be a very interesting matchup just to see. I think the offense runs through him for Boise State pretty much, and if Penn State can shut him down, it's going to be a long day for the Broncos. Next playoff game, that's why I think this one is going to be a 1 p.m. Eastern game, but I have it written down as New Year's Day at 11 a.m., the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Texas versus Arizona State. Texas comes into this one a 12.5 point favorite. Over-under for that one set at 51.5. Longhorns have a really good passing attack. You have the two quarterbacks, in either one you could trust in any big game situation. Sun Devils defense has shown vulnerability to passing this year, so I think Texas is probably going to get away with this one pretty easily. Next playoff game on New Year's Day is at 3 p.m. the Rose Bowl. That one is Ohio State versus Oregon, and Ohio State is a 2.5 point favorite currently. Over under at 53.5. Already mentioned this was a rematch from earlier in the year. Oregon defeated Ohio State by 1 point. I think that one was 23-22, 24-23, something around that. Ducks, the only undefeated team remaining, so that's why I'm surprised that they're not favored for this game. Drew mentioned a couple times, though, earlier this season that it is hard to beat the same team twice, and that one was close in the first matchup. I trust Dan Lanning there. I think he's a good coach, and he can make some adjustments from that first matchup. And the quarterfinal playoff matchup is the All-State Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day at 6:45 p.m. That's an 8:45 Eastern kick. That is late. Who's staying up for that? But Notre Dame versus Georgia. Georgia, 1.5 point favorite heading into the game, over under at 43.5. Georgia's defense has struggled some this season, but I think they're really putting it together at the right time. It's going to be interesting to see how Gunnar Stockton moves the offense after Notre Dame knows that Gunnar Stockton is going to be the quarterback and can prepare for that. So in the SEC championship game, Georgia had the advantage by bringing in Gunnar Stockton after the Carson Beck injury. They were not prepared for Gunnar Stockton, and Gunnar Stockton came in and moved the offense very well. So was it a fluke? Was it just not prepared on Texas's part, and that's why Gunnar Stockton had such a great game? We will find out coming up on Wednesday. So not much else to talk about. We're going to keep going through the end of the college football season. Drew will be back next week, so we can review these playoff games and talk about the upcoming matchups, which we don't even know what they are. That's going to be it for me today. Sorry again that Drew had to miss, but hope you guys had a great Christmas, Hanukkah, all of the holidays. Have a great New Year's. Be safe, watch a lot of football, and we will be back next week and talk about it, to talk some more ball. Peace.